to the session on modern DX applications. I'm part of the development team of HCL DX and have been working on Websphere Portal, Digital Experience, and HCL Digital Experience since 2002. A quick note here, we have a few forward-looking statements here and just the legal terms that you should not make investment decisions based on things that we're showing here and that they can still change until we release them. So a very quick overview of development options in DX. So what we see as our distinction is the ability for full flexibility. So pretty much any kind of development platform or pattern that you want to use, you can use with HCL Digital Experience. That is Java. If you love to use Java, like me, for instance, you can use Java applications. If you like JavaScript, all kinds of frameworks are out there. You can use JavaScript. If you want to use portlets, you're free to use portlets. There are out-of-the-box components as well, like web components that you can use as well. That is like a very modern approach for web development. But you can also use web content. You can use script applications. You can use custom applications. Some of our customers use Vaadin as a Java framework as well. There's all kinds of possibilities, but the ability for DX to bring that all together is very unique and we see as an advantage for our platform. You can also host the data on external systems, like if you want to write a single page application in any kind of scripting language that you feel like let's say React or Angular or Vue.js or similar, and you use our very powerful APIs to fetch the content or fetch the pages or fetch information about digital assets and similar. All of it's possible also by running your application not hosted by DX, but hosted as a single page application or maybe as a mobile application or something completely different. That's where our powerful APIs come into play. We support automatic deployments via CI/CD, so you can also write your infrastructure as code and get all of the changes that you're doing deployed automatically, run through a test pipeline. All of that's possible with the automation capabilities of DX. We allow very dynamic deployments with both Docker and Kubernetes. And that's a pattern that we see in the industry being used. There are various Kubernetes platforms out there that the various cloud providers offer, or you can have an on-prem deployment yourself with, let's say, easier options as well. From a development perspective, we see the ability to use Docker locally as a big advantage. You don't have to install anything. You just get a Docker image and you can make modifications and try out the changes that you're making and test it out. And the same can be used, of course, in CI/CD platforms as well. If you have a platform and a pipeline there, you can have your code deployed to a Docker image, execute some tests, know that it's working, and then roll it out to staging, and maybe after some kind of manual verification also to production. We allow a lot of capabilities for business users to aggregate and compose how the actual end user interface is looking like. So all the applications that the developers are building can then be composed by the business users, and they have full control over what is being shown, what is also a big advantage of the platform. We're not relying on any specific JavaScript framework, meaning that you're really free to choose. So you're not stuck or bound to a certain JavaScript framework. And in the future, you can freely choose and switch to another platform. So if you have, let's say, written a few applications in React, but the company strategy is changing to use Vue.js going forward, then you can mix and match them. And that also allows you to leverage the investments that you might have done already into existing applications or portlets like Java applications that might be using JSF, for instance, or Spring or something similar. So you can mix and match on the same page and interact and provide data between those applications, what they're written in. If they're written in Vue.js, if they're written in Java, you can mix and match them. With the web applications and web components, you can write also micro frontends. So it's a new pattern that we kind of formed originally with Digital Experience as well, is that you have the little applications that can be tested independently, they can be built independently, and then by aggregating them on the page, you basically have multiple micro frontends, and DX can be acting as the super app. That was a little bit of an overview. Now we'll go into details on those different topics. And there is also the ability to ask questions that Dan will be addressing later on. So feel free to ask questions as well as you come across them. So one of the things I mentioned that we're really striving for is full flexibility. So if you want to write Java applications, web applications, J2E applications, and those might be even using EGBs, maybe they're using Java server phases, maybe they're using Spring or struts or any kind of other possible framework like Vaadin, for instance, you can use that if you have some information or knowledge on that, and you can use it with DX. And that also helps with your existing investment too. If you want to write your applications in JavaScript, either using a certain framework or without a framework, maybe vanilla JavaScript for the best performance that you might want, that's also possible. We have a lot of samples out there for the different frameworks on GitHub. So if you want to get started, that should help you very quickly getting up and running with be it Vue.js, React, Angular, or even Next.js. You can write your own single-page applications that leverage our APIs, the web components I mentioned. You can use really any SPA framework of your choice. We have very powerful headless APIs, and we'll have some details on that. You can, of course, also use our very powerful Leap forms. So if you want to build some forms that can be built even with very little or no code knowledge, you can use those Leap applications. And something that we see as a new pattern coming up, and we're also promoting, is the ability to leverage Modermize-apps. So script applications, they have been around for a bit. We still see these as very powerful options. So whatever framework you want to use, you can build them, you can run them, you can test them independently. They can run outside DX, and then they can run inside DX. What is very nice about the script applications too is that we have a very powerful push capability. You can store them in GitHub or whatever framework of choice where you store your code in and automatically deploy them. And you can use all of the Wickham and DX Java APIs or JavaScript APIs to build those applications. You can preview them. You can use them in projects as well. So if you're building an application or maybe make your business users adjust those applications, they can preview the changes that they're making, bring it out in a project, send it through a workflow process, have maybe their manager preview it, review it, approve it, and then can automatically move to production within like a single click. You can build basically any kind of pretty user interfaces with that and using the frameworks for that. We also see the ability to use Figma here. So let's say, or other UX frameworks or systems where you can build a UI and then transition from that into code and directly also deploy it on your DX system. A note on micro frontends. So it's a big pattern at the moment in development movement to build smaller applications and not have a giant app instead. And these client small applications can then be combined in the user interface and together provide a use case or solution for the end user. And we kind of were built on that originally by portlets, because portlets are kind of micro frontends. Full, they can also have, of course, a backend capability. But you can independently develop those. You can test them separately. You can test them together and then put them together. And that could also be web components as well. And that brings us to web components, another pattern and component that I wanted to mention. Web components are a very hot topic at the moment. It's a framework as well that is established, and you can use basically any JavaScript technology of your choice. You can build it, but it doesn't expose necessarily what the framework is under the covers. It doesn't really matter what it is or how you've built it. These web components follow a certain pattern, and they can be reused inside DX as well by putting them on the page. They have all the cool new stuff, like using a shadow DOM for best performance in the browser, and they can also use HTML templates. We are using also web components out of the box, for instance, for our new search capability that's based on OpenSearch. We are leveraging web components there as well as like a sample case and also like a modern deployment pattern for leveraging applications in DX. There are many Leap enhancements out there as well, and there are also separate webcasts that talk about these, so I just wanted to mention a few of those. Leap, if you're not familiar with it, is the component that we have that gives you the ability to build forms, and those forms can be built either without developer involvement, but also with developer involvement. Like recently, we have a custom widget API being introduced here, and that gives you the ability to also have custom widgets, like little components on the UI that can be reused for your forms. Leap is available now as a container as well, as a container that runs on OpenLiberty, a very modern and lightweight platform, and you can deploy it very easily together with DX and then use those Leap forms within DX. We see a few more use cases from customers now on the headless side of things, and we'll talk a little bit about our APIs that make headless possible. So as you're aware, DX is not a purely headless product, but it's a hybrid product that allows you to run both websites in DX, but also outside DX. So if you want to have or leverage a use case for having some headless systems, you can use the APIs from DX. At the same time, you can also run some of the applications directly from DX and have it hosted by DX. The APIs that we have available are covering, and of course, Open API compliant. We also provide a GraphQL interface, and we will be extending those APIs going forward, and we have been extending them as we keep on moving. There's quite a list of APIs available. I'm gonna talk about a few of those here. Like all of these, what they have in common is that there is an API Explorer. The goal of the API Explorer is really to make it easy for developers to try those APIs out, to find the pattern that they need to understand all the different parameters that can be used, and then leverage whatever pattern they've been finding will be working good for them also in their applications. So we have the Ring API as well that covers with GraphQL or OpenAPI different functionalities like content management, access control, authentication, rendering, and similar. More recently, we provided the Wickham API v2, what is an improved version of the Wickham v1 API. As you can see, we are building new versions of those APIs based on feedback from you guys, our customers. And we are also very interested in feature requests or additional requirements that you might have around that. So in case you can think of something, we have an AHA request system where you can request items, or you can, of course, also ask questions here at the end of the call, or you can contact the DX team. There is also a user group out there that is very active on Discord for DX that I also wanted to mention, where you can ask any kind of developer questions or also administration or deployment questions. So talking about Wickham API v2, you can manage content, and managing is not only retrieving content, you can even update content. So maybe in a headless scenario, you're working on building your own user interface even for managing content. All of that is possible with our very powerful Wickham API v2. It covers components, libraries, sites, workflows, rendering of content, also very powerful. So you can apply a presentation template to a piece of content and get the actual markup out and then use that markup in a headless pattern. Search as well. And who doesn't want to find the right content? And that's a very common thing nowadays, of course, with the growth of content, the growth of digital information. You want to have a powerful search to find the content that you're looking for. So this API is very performant. It's, of course, very important for us. It's secure and role-based. So we are a very secure platform for digital experience in the internet, and we leverage roles throughout the system. The API is virtual portal aware. It is project aware, so you can even do projects in a headless fashion if you want to. The digital asset manager, our capability to manage digital assets, be it PDFs or be it Excel files or images, and also modify those files on the fly in the user interface. Also with our APIs, it is possible to retrieve the content and the items for them with the API. And there is also GraphQL available for it. There's also the image processor API that allows you to resize images. We do that automatically for you when you upload an image, depending on your configuration. So if you want to generate automatically a special image for a mobile device, or maybe for a tablet, or maybe for any kind of modern device, like a watch as well, like a smartwatch, you can do that automatically and then retrieve that image with our APIs. For non-containerized deployments, we also offer a set of APIs that are available, like the content model for retrieving pages or managing pages, the search one interface, the user management interface, or access control. New with a recent CF, we have our new search capability that is based on OpenSearch, and we are actively working on extending the search more and more. So OpenSearch is a very modern platform that brings our search back to the latest capabilities. It leverages automatically access control. So here again, the pattern I mentioned before, that security is top of our mind in digital experience, making sure that only people that are allowed to see certain things can retrieve the right content, can retrieve the right data. You can use the OpenSearch capability to search content, to search assets, search pages, and all of that is possible via the REST API. So if in the past, maybe you've had very, very complex menus where you search for many attributes and conditions, you can now use OpenSearch as well. That will automatically also include access control to filter to say, I want all the content that's living in a certain location, that has a certain set of keywords, that has a certain set of attributes, or an offering template as well, and get that data back to me in the most effective fashion. So we see that OpenSearch, and it also includes rich text indexing. So if you have PDF files and similar, we do index the content in those files so you can find the right content. Very powerful capability, new with 2.2.2, but also being further improved with the upcoming CFs. Another new capability I want to mention here is our new function with the presentation template builder. We see that with various customers out there already that are really interested in this capability. It gives you the chance or the option as a business user to use drag and drop to build a user interface for presentation templates and then retrieve content with that presentation template applied to leverage in, for instance, in your headless API or also when rendering with DX. It's another capability. And of course, with the REST APIs, you can retrieve that presentation template and the content that's rendered with that cool new presentation template that your business users might have built. A few notes on automation. Another important topic, of course, for both developers, but also for DevOps and stage into production. We have been introducing the DX client capabilities quite a while ago, and we've been extending that as we keep on going. The DX client is a tool set that comes either for Node.js. It is also now available publicly on the NPM repo if you want to download from there, if that's easier, or we provide a Docker image as well in case you don't want to have any Node.js installations locally. And there's all kinds of commands that we have bundled in DX client that you might have used separately before. Maybe before you were using XML Access, separately you were using WebDev, you might have used WebDev Toolkit or similar for development. We have tried to bundle all of that capability with DX clients. You can deploy the theme, a script application, deploy a portlet, trigger them staging, make resource environment minor modifications. All of that you can automate. And we really recommend to automate those steps and not doing them manually, as that makes it easier for repeatability, for testability, and also making sure that whatever actually arrives on the production system is the best thing possible for your end users. So DX client, it is, and we did ship also a set of pipelines for Jenkins as one possible capability. If you're not using Jenkins and use another CI/CD automation system, you can of course use DX client with that as well. We just ship some sample pipelines with that, so it integrates into your CI/CD footprint. It's very lightweight, it's a small tool, and we see that both for developers, but also for CI/CD. So if you're a developer, you're developing locally a script application or maybe a Java application, you can just use DX client after you've built the application. Just push out your DX server and try it out. So if you think about CI/CD, right, the classic deployment pattern is you have your code living in a source code repository, most commonly now GitHub, right? But there are, of course, many others out there like SVN, RTC, or similar. And as a developer, you might make your changes, test it out on developer test server. You eventually open a PR for your code changes. And once that's checked in, your built integration system, let's say Jenkins, has notification that something has changed in the branch, like developer master branch, and then it builds automatically and deploys it on your staging or integration server. It gets checked out. Some tests are being run automatically, and then it can be promoted to production. The production can either happen via syndication, let's say in case of a script application, or you could also consider deploying, like let's say, from your built integration server to production. Both of those paths are possible. Right. Next, I want to talk about where you can run DX, and trying to be there again as flexible as possible. So as mentioned, we are providing DX as a Docker image, and you can deploy that with Kubernetes. If you want to run locally, you can either run Docker directly, or you can use Docker Compose as well. If you want to run DAM and other things also in parallel, that's all available on GitHub. It's fairly lightweight, so you can run DX in your local system, even if you, let's say, have a Mac where you cannot natively install the core image, for instance. So you can configure your Docker desktop. Of course, it doesn't have to be Docker. If you want to use other container platforms like Containerd or something else, that is also possible, so you're not stuck with Docker. You can use other deployments too. And it should be really easy to get that up and running. We have also documented and lots of sample and documentation around how to use debug mode with your local Docker image, so you can step through code changes right away, both either in the browser with JavaScript applications, or if you have server-side applications, so let's say with Java, you can also use the debug mode to step through them. In terms of deployments, Kubernetes is what we see a lot being used for the production deployments or staging deployments, and we're there again as flexible as possible, meaning that we are documenting the Kubernetes levels instead of the actual Kubernetes platforms. So you're free to choose whatever Kubernetes platform that you want. If you want to use Google Cloud or OpenShift or EKS or GKE or AKS or any kind of other Kubernetes deployment, as long as they're within the supported versions of Kubernetes, you can deploy it there. This also has the ability to scale up and down dynamically. What is appreciable, lots of our customers have flexibility, not having to think about when you do deployments or when you develop your applications, like in terms of scaling, like do I have to scale them myself? No, Kubernetes can do the scaling for you automatically, so you can branch out. If you have, let's say, Black Friday coming up here in the US, you can be assured that DX can scale up to the load that you might have for that special day. Another important capability that we see stands out with DX, both in terms of developers, but more also in the capability of giving the business users more control, is our features in that particular area for business user administration. So you know the different, you might be aware of different building blocks in DX, right? There's page, the theme header that would typically be provided by the developers. The navigation that's built in, the links, search capabilities, page components or applications that are deployed on the page, and also the footer. All of these can be controlled pretty much by business users as well, meaning the aggregation of the page can be managed by business users. So once the developers provide the applications that they want to be used, or even the business users build them themselves, if they have some knowledge on script apps, or maybe they're using VoltMX or Deep to build some forms, they can just drag and drop them onto the page and build their own user interface. So you can use, without having to reinvent the wheel, the different applications here, and you have that flexibility. So no matter what kind of application your users have been building, your application developers, you can then, as a business user, drag and drop them on the page, combine them on the page, and with that, provide a very powerful user interface. And you don't even have to worry a business user what kind of application is it. Is it React or Angular? Is it a web component? You have full control over that. And while you're there, you can also make changes with web content directly with inline editing. In terms of page layouts, you also have full flexibility to make changes. So you can say, how many columns do I want? And then what do I want actually on those columns here? And some of these screenshots are taken from our HCL software marketplace platform that I want to mention as well. So if you want to try it out, if you want to try HCL DX, it is very easy to try HCL DX on the HCL software marketplace, also being known as Sophie, where you can try the latest version of DX and also try all kinds of applications as a developer. So in here, I can use different content. I can switch up the columns. I can modify even the theme. That content, for instance, down there for the footer could come from WCM. So as a business user, I can make modifications, or as a developer, I can also curate my application to the business users so they can make modifications within DX. Our WCM, our Web Content Manager interface, provides dynamic capabilities and also personalization capabilities where you can, as a business user, make modifications. We allow you as a developer also to plug into every point of the content delivery. If you want the content to be delivered differently, if you want to influence the rules, let's say you want to say if the user is in a certain location or is using a certain device, different content should be shown. That can be used out of the box without developer involvement, but maybe as a developer, you want to build a capability to plug into external systems like calling SAP or other systems, ERP, CRM or Salesforce or other things to find out the data. You can plug that as a developer into that, and then the business user can leverage that to build the user interface. I mentioned the inline editing capability or in-place editing. So you can directly, when the site is rendering, switch into the edit mode, make modifications. It's all saved back. There's project, there's workflow. So you can leverage those capabilities to ensure that there's preview and review of the changes you're making so that they can be delivered to your end users securely and also in the best fashion. We organize our content in libraries, and you can control very easily on what gets controlled. We do support very powerful multilingual capabilities, and you can have different libraries. We are introducing or planning to introduce a new capability with 2.2.4 with auto-translate with AI as well, coming up as a feature, again, making it easier for the business users to make their work and to leverage the applications built by the developers. There are the capability of having content of site areas. You can control access on all of these levels, so you can see certain things that you want, and then the content lives within those site areas. And at the end of the day, you can use the inline editing capability or in-place editing capability to modify the content directly there. From a DAM perspective, I mentioned DAM as a powerful capability we introduced with containers to manage your assets. You can drag and drop them, you can modify them, you can bulk upload them. Automatically, we do generate the different renditions for those images. It can not only be images, but also PDFs or other files. And again, it's very important for us to deliver this securely, meaning that there is access control applied on the collections and relatively new feature also on sub-collections. So you can nest access control with them, making it possible for the practitioners or for the developers to leverage the assets that come from them on their site, or maybe in a microsite, or maybe in an SPA. Feature I mentioned coming up with our 2.2.4 release is the presentation designer. And what are we trying to solve here? We've had a request from customers that they would like to be able to build as a non-technical user or user interface with less developer development involvement, because our developers are very busy typically, and we want to give the business users more capabilities without having to go back to developers for every modification. So that's what we're delivering with 2.2.4, and of course coming up more releases where you can just drag and drop and build some nice UIs. We automatically generate the presentation template for you, and then the presentation template is applied to the content, and you can then leverage that content either on a headless application or also when rendering with DX. In terms of standards, we have made some great strides here and planning to ship with 2.2.4 our new offering that will be based upon Open Liberty. There will be a new container called Web Engine, and that one has it's leveraging a later JDK. It's leveraging a modern and recent version of J2E. It's going to allow to use a recent JSF version or a Spring version in case you want to build Java applications with UI. And we're also looking into support of the portlet spec version 3. So far we were running with Java 8 when you were running on Web Application Server. So new building on Open Liberty, we are going to support Java 11 to start with, and we're also working on upgrading to Java 17 and 21 eventually to stay up to date. I know a lot of developers have been waiting for this moment to be able to leverage a recent Java version with all the cool new features that come with Java 11. We've also moved from the IBM JDK to OpenJDK or Semrude JDK, and this builds faster, it starts faster, it's more lightweight, it's overall a great experience. Similar as with Java, also the J2E side of things, we have upgraded from J2E 6 to version 8, and that brings a lot of new capabilities along, like the Servlet 4 spec, the EGB3 spec, and so on, that give you the capabilities that you might want to have modern applications. In terms of libraries, we have also worked on updating the libraries that are there under the covers. So with Web Application Server, we had a lot of older and outdated APIs in place, like Apache Commons or Hibernate or similar, Struts, Spring, and so on. And with the Open Liberty deliverable, we have updated this or in progress of updating them, and allows the customers to use a more modern version when they're developing. I know that at times folks have had conflicts with later versions that they wanted to use, and we're addressing that request. In terms of security, again, security is at the heart of DX, and we have to update the standard there, working on making it easier to use OpenID or OpenAuth, to add Jakarta authentication as well, and to also have a little bit less complexity in terms of security configuration. There are a few APIs that have changed. Most of these are internal APIs that we have been updating with our deliverable on Open Liberty. And for a customer, we see that this will be very easy to get started by leveraging those modern APIs that Open Liberty brings along. From a deployment perspective, we are planning to no longer use any RWX volumes, meaning that you can use just an RWO volume, which should both bring down the footprint of your license for your cloud provider and also overall makes it much faster. We saw like a up to 4 times startup improvement when running with Web Engine running on Open Liberty. Another thing I wanted to mention here is that we are planning in the future to allow you to customize the image, so you can build your own image of DX and then roll that out. So that's something that we don't allow at the moment. Basically, we're not as compatible there with the cloud deployments, where you ideally typically want read-only deployments. So in the future, you will be able to use the capability of building an image and then just rolling that image out, and you have full control over that image with your CI/CD pipeline, and whenever a new one comes along, you can update that one. What also is easier for developers is we can start a lot faster with running on Liberty, and you can also use the debug mode still with running on Liberty. So when you write your own applications, you can step through it, and of course you can use all kinds of development platforms, be it Visual Studio Code, Eclipse, or whatever else with that deployment. In terms of deployments, we still support, of course, DX Client, but under the covers, you can also use XML Access or other tools to use the deployment on Liberty. So I was mostly talking about Java applications here and updating and modernizing them and updating and modernizing the overall platform. But in terms of JavaScript, I also want to mention that we let you pick whatever framework of choice you have. We have removed or are removing any kind of out-of-the-box frameworks that are there. So for the read-only mode, there's no Dojo anymore. You can basically just use vanilla JavaScript or whatever framework of choice you want. And we have a lot of samples out there on GitHub in case you want to get started quicker with a deployment pattern. Another important feature for deployments, for development, we see is the integration capabilities that DX brings along. And we bring a lot of features along to make that integration easy, since you might already have existing deployments of other systems, be it SAP, CRMs, or similar, and you want to leverage those. So we have the capabilities of the web application bridge that lets you bring in existing user interfaces, but it is, instead of just an iframe, it is wrapped. It brings capabilities along where you have an API gateway, API proxy there, where you have control over the headers and security. We have the application integrator as well. We have the capabilities of the AJAX proxy or outbound connections to make AJAX calls without having to worry about CORS headers. So that capability is also inbuilt in the product. We have a powerful integrations with connections and HCL commerce as other features as well. You can very easily integrate Leap forms, and Leap is part of the product set. Of course, you can leverage Leap for building very powerful forms, and it's used across the world by many big customers as well. For building those forms, be it very easy and quick forms like a little survey, or maybe you want more powerful forms, like for instance, providing a text interface. We have built a connector with Vault Foundry. Vault Foundry is an API gateway that is also coming with DX, for instance, with the cloud native package of DX. And you can use it also to leverage WCM data. We allow personalization with HCL Unica, which is another platform for personalization capabilities, and also analytics with Unica and Discover. We are providing Foundry as an API gateway that, by the way, can also run on OpenLiberty as a capability. So that's also bringing us together, both Leap and Foundry and DX as running on OpenLiberty. And I know a lot of customers are also deploying fresher workloads that are outside DX on OpenLiberty, so that also makes it easier for managing your overall deployments. Pretty new and coming up is capabilities we're currently working on to integrate VaultMX natively. So you will be, we're planning to make it available that you can deploy an application from VaultMX as a portlet. That's currently in the works. And also deeper integration with Leap to be able to make an easy deployment on Kubernetes of DX and Leap with just a few clicks. That's more capabilities that we have coming up for both a deployment perspective, but then also as a developer using those capabilities in your applications. Very important nowadays, of course, is to deliver your digital experience as an omni-channel, meaning that you want to cover all kinds of devices. And for that, we again are feeling that flexibility is what our customers need and want, and make it possible for both the developers as well as the business users to bring out the capabilities easily for everybody. So we are very flexible, so you can build, for instance, mobile apps using our APIs in case you're more in a headless scenario. It could be mobile apps, could be SPAs or similar. You can also render responsively with DX, so automatically DX renders responsively. And for some customers, it can be sufficient to just have a website that is responsive. We have inbuilt capabilities for running progressive web applications within DX. There's not modifications necessary. You can just render your DX site as desired as a PWA, and then of course it can be installed on an Android device or an iOS device. It looks like the native app it does use under the covers the capabilities coming from the server, what makes it less effort to bring it out. If you want to use micro frontends that are mobile native, you can use this and leverage them within DX. You can develop native apps also with our VoltMX integration. So you can build very powerful apps with VoltMX that can run on both in a mobile app, but you can then leverage the same capabilities I mentioned coming up as a portlet in DX. So just from comparing like the effort perspective, and how native things are, but also lower complexity and bringing things out quicker and easier if you're thinking about an iterative approach where you bring features out and add to it. So a very easy pattern is you can just render your DX site responsively, but of course in that case it would not be a mobile app. You can have a PWA or AMP platform instead with DX, where you render the PWA as an app. It looks like a native app, but it is basically website rendered from the server. We do support offline mode there as well, in case you want to have a use case where maybe somebody's getting in a plane and they don't have connectivity. They can still work in their DX PWA, and when they're back online, they can connect. You can possibly wrap a responsive site in a native app. It's another capability. Or you can use the low-code mobile development with HCL VoltMX that is a lot quicker, a lot more powerful than writing a native app, let's say in iOS directly, where then you have to write it for iOS, you have to write it for Android, and so on. Instead, we recommend to use VoltMX for that capability. And as mentioned, we have this upcoming capability where you can leverage applications that you have built within VoltMX Iris user interface and then render them as portlet, but also render them as native apps. So you can have ideally the same code, write it once, and then use it both for your website and the mobile app. In terms of tooling capabilities, no, it's also an important topic for our customers, like which tooling to use. So you can use your favorite editor, of course, with DX. We do have a bunch of plugins available for different options there. For instance, for Visual Studio, we have a plugin for theme development where you can directly make some modifications and then push automatically. On that same area, also, we're working with DX Client on the capability to push HTML components and presentation templates with directly within Visual Studio or from the DX Client. We have a lot of script samples out there for Angular, React, Vue.js, Next.js, and others. And you can develop those script applications locally with Node.js and then deploy them with DX Client. So you can step in debug mode, either locally through it or also remotely. And there are all kinds of editors out there. Maybe you like Eclipse, maybe you use IntelliJ or any of those. It is possible for your Java extensions or also for your JavaScript work that you're doing. In terms of debugging capabilities, so you can use, of course, Red or Eclipse or IntelliJ, and we have various extensions for that. You can also use Visual Studio Code. There was recently a webcast I wanted to mention as well that showcased how to use the debug mode, and I took a screenshot from that to step by step through that. What is very powerful for your Java applications. It's a very nice way to debug what is going on in your server. And with the hot code swap feature, you can even make development changes. So you can make a change, save it, that change is saved back to the server without having to do any restart, any redeployment. And you can develop that way step by step while you're going through the code. We also have existing capabilities like, for instance, the web experience factory, right? And that is still possible to be used. Of course, we do recommend to look at using other platforms for development like VoltMX for new applications, but for existing applications, of course, you can use web as well. And we have tested that on Liberty, looking at providing support for that at some point in time under consideration. The upcoming integration with VoltMX, I mentioned the capability of VoltMX being a very powerful user interface. And in this series here of TX Total Experience, we also had a few sessions where we had saw some development details and capability details of VoltMX and also of Leap. So if you have maybe missed those sessions, go back and take a look at those as well. And we can also help you with links in case you have missed those. Some additional resources to find, added those also to the slides. I'm assuming that those slides will be in some form available to you. There are some great courses out there for developers that are available for free. So on the HCL Software University, both for DX as well as for VoltMX and all kinds of other platforms that we have within HCL Software are available there. You can check them out for free. There is also certification now available in case you want to showcase your capabilities that you have with DX or with any of the other platforms. You can take those courses and get certified in DX. So specifically, we have something for JSF development, for Portal development, for Java development, for script apps, for WCM, for Leap. I really recommend to check those out in case you haven't seen those and you might not have the information on them. Or you can also reach out to us. So some more utilities. If you want to look at the DX portlet development utilities, that's a Maven archetype where you can develop portlets very easily. There's many samples and tools available at github.com HCL Tech Software. The DX client is available for download as well. And I also want to mention the user group that's called DXers, digital experience folks might already know about that. Recommend check that out. Maybe join it, ask some questions, and see what's going on. I think that leaves us a little bit of time pretty much at the end here for questions that might have come up. So I'll hand that back over to Dan and see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, we have a couple questions here. So the first one, Sharisa, good to see you here. Can you search using OpenSearch to go against database content?
So the OpenSearch deployment that we have that comes with DX can be extended, meaning that you can use whatever plugin or capability that OpenSearch has to search data from a database or from any kind of backend as well. Like what we ship out of the box, it does integrate with the capabilities for searching seed lists and DAM items, but there is no reason why you couldn't use that for searching database content as well, or something that you have in some external system.
Excellent, thank you. Next one from Megna. Nice to see you, Megna. Can portlets and micro front ends be used interchangeably in the case of DX?
So portlets are, I guess, in some form a subset of micro frontends. Every portlet, since it's typically bringing itself, is a micro frontend, but there could also be applications on not portlets that you put on the page. If you think about, let's say, in a theme where you want to integrate an SPA, in the SPA renders, that might not be a portlet. That might be just an application itself.
Okay, great. Next one from Herman Ubler. Good to see you, Herman. Which portlet specs are available on Liberty?
So out of the box, we are shipping with the 286, 168, and IBM spec. And we are looking at portlet free spec going up, but those are the first ones that we are shipping with.
Okay. Also from Magna, are web components based on Wickham?
So web components are like an independent specification by the W3C group and others that is not specific to Wickham, meaning that it's a web component application that follows a JavaScript interface that you can basically bring onto the page, and it can leverage WCM, or it can be rendered from within WCM, but it's not tied to WCM, if that makes sense.
Sounds good to me. Next one from Daniele. Do you think DX images could be available for IBM Power Architecture?
So with our move to Liberty, we are a lot more flexible now because we were kind of stuck a little bit before with the IBM JDK, before it supported. So we could build on Power on ARM. We are looking at ARM as like one of the next ones. And if there's enough demand for supporting Power, we could do that. My recommendation would be to bring that up in as a requirement in our AHA channel. And I'm sure there's more customers out here. If more customers are interested in that, please vote for that idea and we'll start looking at that. But at least technically it is possible.
Excellent, thanks. Antonio had something that he wanted to mention here is that we did a large overview and it was an excellent job. Now, if you need more information, you may want to contact your local representative. There are demos, like Thomas was outlining, there's a lot of demos available, or we can find some code samples for you as well. So if you need a detailed discussion on particular topics, just contact your local guy and they will help you out and will get the information you need. I just thought that was good to say. Anything else, Thomas, as we and that's all the questions for now.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us here. We have some really exciting features coming up. I'm personally extremely excited also about the Liberty feature, new Java levels, new J2E levels, the integration with Wall. There is great things coming up. So thank you guys for your interest and stay tuned. We will do more sessions on like our new features, and reach out also on the user group or at HCL or to your sales colleague or sales contact.
Thank you and have a good day. Bye.
Bye.